Let's learn Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, social life, who is the true teacher of Torah. Okay, Chevra, let's look at the sources this morning. Parshat Miketz. In my preparations the last 3 days, I had a whole other thing prepared, and then I came across this wonderful source sheet by this educator named David Saltzman. And it was so chock full of these incredible commentaries, different comments, at least 20 of them. I just thought, oh, this, and some interesting insights into language and also some good questions that are in the Parsha. The first source is from chapter 42. Now, just to give you a context again, as the Torah turns every week, in Parshat Miketz begins with Joseph in the prison that he was placed in by Potiphar, a second father figure in his life, who loved him, trusted him, and gave him his house, as it were. And in that Me Too preempted, like the early expression of sexual seduction and framing. Yosef was attempted to be seduced by Mrs. Robinson. By the wife of Potiphar. And he runs out of the house. She has his garment. Second time in the text that he's stripped, naked, presumably. Yosef always has to be naked. He has to start over all the time. It's like constant. It's constantly having things that garb him and conceal him taken away until he can't hide anymore. But so he runs out, and the jig is up, and he's placed into prison. Put into prison, and in prison, something remarkable happens, because it's really the first moment that Joseph's character moves from being a dreamer to being a dream interpreter. He moves from trying to understand his own destiny at the center of everything to someone whose liberation is dependent upon reading other people well. Clearly something he didn't get right in chapter 37. And in the beginning of the story, when he didn't read his brothers correctly, or the room. And in prison, of all places, this skill, clearly he knows how to interpret his own dreams, because his dreams are pretty spot on. In any event, he has two dreams of his own in chapter 37, that he has two dreams of two different characters. One of them is called the Sarah Ophim, the baker, and one is called the Sarah Mashkim, the wine steward, the sommelier, the butler. And he's remarkably astute to actually see the two dreams as two separate dreams and to accurately pinpoint what each one means for each person. And he predicts that the baker the Sarah Mashkim, the wine steward, will be replaced, put back onto his he'll be given his job back. He gets to go free, but the baker will not. And as soon as, of course, that happens, the text tells us that the baker is hung and or impaled, and the wine steward, thank you, I'm drinking, and the wine steward, the drink man will be replaced. And he says to him something interesting to tell a wine steward, not to forget me, kind of the thing that wine makes you do in a way. But so he says, please don't forget me. And sure enough, at the end of last week, he forgets him. And the text starts this week there with this languishing Joseph. Like he Mikesh Nasayim Shana, at the end of 2 years. And it doesn't tell us at the end of 2 years, he remembers him exactly. It says at the end of 2 years, which is directly related to Yosef, right? Because the 2 years are the 2 years that he has now been waiting, 24 months in the clink. But the 2 years now, the end of 2 years, and it's also not at the end of, it's not just after 2 years, it's at the end, miketz. The word kates here is like, it means to split something. And anyway, at the end of these 2 years, Paro Cholem, right? Remember the story. Pharaoh has dreams. He has two dreams. Nobody can figure it out for him, and they rush Joseph out of the pit, out of the dungeon. They pick him up and they bring him to Pharaoh. He's reclothed and he has to shave, haircut, shampoo, and then he stands before Pharaoh, and he gets it right this time, and he also situates himself. He says he gives them the dream of right, the interpretation of the dream of the fat cows and the skinny cows, and the stalk of wheat, and there are 7 really, sun-scorched ones, and the whole business, right? And all of this is happening, and Joseph has the exactly perfect administrative idea on how to avert the disaster of the 7 years of famine that are coming. The 7 years of famine, Joseph will be at this point. He was, I guess, 17 when it starts. He's 20 years later. He's now 37, or he's 30. I'm sorry. When he stands before Pharaoh, he's 30. So the text tells us he's 30 years old. So this whole thing from last week till today is 13 years. He gets married, has 2 kids. One's called Menashe, because you helped me forget my father's pain. The other one is Ephraim, because you helped me to be fructive and creative even in the land of my affliction. Clearly, he's thinking a lot about his father's house, even though he's trying to forget it. And he has, at the end of 7 years, which are the 7 years of abundance, the years of famine begin, and they are intense. Just as the dream predicted, everything that was before is forgotten. Thank God for Joseph, because he stores up all the wheat and stores all the grain. And by the end of chapter, I think it was 41 or 40, the entire region is engulfed in a famine, which then leads to the brothers coming down to visit, right, for the first time. People know this part of the story too. We know it. The brothers come down. He accuses them of being spies. He says, you are spies. You come down to see the land, and they deny it. And he demands that they leave someone as collateral, right? And who are they going to leave? They leave, I'm sorry, no, he demands that they go back. They haven't yet, he doesn't ask for collateral. They go back, and Joseph gives, and the money, they get the grain, they pay for it, and then Joseph tells his servants to place the money back into their bags. They're barely outside the city, and he catches up to them and opens the bags, and they go, "Oy Gewalt," right? Oy Gewalt. Now, no, it's Shimon will be left behind. Shimon is left behind. But 1 second. So now we pick up the story where, yeah. So I think we pick up the story now. 1 second. Okay, no. So we're even closer to the end. I think we're closer to the end already. Where they go back already. Shimon's left over. They go back to Yaakov Avinu, and they tell Jacob. And they tell Jacob what happened, and they tell him that they are not allowed to go back to Egypt unless they bring Binyamin, right? So we know this part of the story. And so Reuven steps forward and says, if I don't bring him back, Yaakov says, no, you can't have him. I already lost 1 son. I'm not going to lose another one. And then they go back. Reuven says to him, listen, if you give me your son, if you give me Benjamin, then you can have my 2 children, Reuven's children, and you can kill them if they don't come back. So that's not exactly very exciting to Yaakov. And sure enough, it doesn't win the day until Judah steps forward. As you know, as the hero says, if you give me Benjamin, I will make myself personally as his eravon, as his collateral. And if he doesn't come back, then I myself will be in place of him. Great. So he successfully brings Benjamin back. So right, there's a lot here. He sees Benjamin. It's all right. Benjamin and the reunion with Yosef, and it works. Yosef is happy. He has a special meal with them, but then things get cruel. He places his divination cup into Benjamin's sack, and as they're leaving with Shimon, with Benjamin, with the grain, they catch up to his servant. Joseph's servant catches up to them, opens them, and they're searching. They say, your servants we're innocent. We didn't do anything wrong. And at some point, I think it was Judah, whoever says, listen, whoever has the cup in his bag, he should be, should kill him, or be a servant. And so they open the bag and they find a Benjamin. They all rend their clothing. They rip their clothing. and now they're going to be on their way back to Joseph. And when this happens, right? And no, on the way back to Joseph, because they're going back into Egypt. And when this happens, they say this thing. Now, I'm not 1,000% sure. I'm pretty sure these psukim are with that, not in the first, not when they found the money, but these are the verses that are said by the brothers upon being caught in being framed. Right? They know that they didn't do anything wrong. They know that they didn't steal the money. They didn't place the money back in their sacks. They also know they didn't put the cup. And they say these psukim, these verses. If you look at source number 1 at the top of the page, Vayomru ish el achiv. I forgot to translate these. Okay, say Vayomru ish el achiv. They said one to the other, the brother. One man said to their brother. They spoke amongst themselves. And here are the 2 words: aval, or the 3 words: aval ashemim anachnu. Aval, but, or however, we are guilty. Ashemim anachnu, we are guilty. Ashem means, you'll see in a second, it means guilty. Alachinu, right? Because of our brother, or on our brother, about the matter of our brother. Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho, for we have seen the stress, the distress, the pain of his soul. V'hitchanano elenu, when he was pleading to us. Velo shamanu, and we didn't listen. Alkein ba'a aleinu hatzara zot, and therefore, this tzara, his tzara, we saw, and we didn't listen. And therefore, this tzara, this distress, this pain, has come upon us. Vayanu Ruvain osam, and then Ruvain piped up and said, and he answered them, which is, they weren't asking him a question. He answered them anyway, saying, Hello, amarti alechem lemor. This is the first I told you so in the Torah. It's literally, I told you so. Hello, amarti alechem lemor. Didn't I say to you, saying, Al techteu b'yeled. Do not sin with the child. Velo shmatem, and you didn't listen to me either. Right? It's a nice. They didn't listen to him, and they didn't listen to their older brother. The gam damohi nedidrash, and also, and as well, his blood is being demanded, or right, his blood is being demanded. So I guess the questions that are animating us and in this worksheet is, why are the brothers ashamed? And what was their crime? And what was their punishment, if there is one? How do they feel the punishment fit the crime? How do they realize that this was a divine decree? Right? It seems that they believe that this is happening to them by a hand greater than them. They don't believe, of course, it's clear that they don't think that the guilt is for what actually is taking place, and therefore the people doing to them can't be the people who are the proximate, right, causes. It has to be some greater cause. The only one who could know, presumably, and punish them is karma, karma. It's the divine karma, karma. So let's look at the words that are the 2 most important words here in the text, probably, which is asham and aval. Because the text says in verse 21, they say to their brothers, aval. Aval usually means but. And what's what how does it work here? But we are guilty. It doesn't really, it's a strange usage here. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. In Hebrew, there are 3-letter roots, and some believe that there are 2-letter roots. Generally speaking, when we think about roots of words in Hebrew, the shoresh, it's usually a 3-letter root. But there were very strong grammarians who believe that there are kind of 2-letter roots. Also, a book that I once heard Reb Zalman talking about that I went and bought, is a fascinating book on 2-letter roots. And so here, look at Isaac Mosesson on this. Nonetheless, when one analyzes the Edenic word as a chemical compound, this was brilliant. Like when we think of chemical compounds, we think of 2 elements, right? Or whatever the elements are. Here we have a 2-letter element, modular elements of meaning, a 1-letter aleph element of negation, emerges to negate the two-letter sub-root. Like, again, you'll see in a second, like asymmetry. There's an aleph in the front of symmetry to see not symmetry, right? So there's an aleph that functions sometimes in the front of two-letter roots to negate the two-letter subroot, right? You'll see. Look, aval, source, you see the source one, A-B-H-A-L, aleph bet lamed, aleph bet lamed, right? But or only. How do you get to but or only? So ba-lal, bet lamed means a mixture of components, right? Something is mixed together, it's bet lamed, bal. A-B-L could mean not mixed together with others, which means standing out or only or but, right? Standing away from. Asham, similarly, look at the word ashamed, asham. It's interesting, asham and ashamed, right? Ashamed and asham, right? Guilt means guilt. Shame, the two-letter root of shame, shin mem it means like a name. What's your, what's my shame? What's your shame? What's your name, right? Shame is name. Shmot in Exodus, like the names, shame. So if shame is a name, fame and reputation, then asha means the loss of name, the loss of face, of your good name, of reputation that comes with shameful guilt. So therefore, this Edenic, right, word offers asham is to be guilty or to bear a punishment as well. Like in Leviticus 4:3, if the anointed priest should sin, this is called a guilt offering, and asham is one of the actual sacrificial offerings in the temple. It's a guilt offering. If a priest has sinned, they have to bring a guilt offering. If you've lost face, you bring what's called a lost face offering or a lost name or a lost reputation offering. How does somebody rebuild their reputation? They have to offer this kind of asham. So if you move down slightly, Caroline, the aleph plus shin mem could also be seen as two combined elements. One can add the negative prefix aleph as an asymmetry to the word shame to get the defamation and disrepute that comes with shame. Shame, repute, could be seen as the opposite of shame, right? Which you got already. So here we have the beginning of an interpretation of what the brothers might be feeling, right? And when they say aval, but, right, we are stood out at this moment. It's not aval as in however, it's at this moment we are now singled out. Aval, we've been singled out. Aval, we're no longer mixed in. We are not mixed. We are ashemim. We've lost face. Now, it's not clear, right, at this moment, if they feel that they did something wrong. It just could be that they feel like they've been found out. Here, guilt doesn't necessarily mean the word chet, which means they admit that they've made a sin, right? Now, the only one who says that word, of course, is Reuven. He said, I said, don't sin. It's not clear that the brothers feel that they've sinned, per se, but they do recognize a certain lost faith, lost reputation. Now, let's look at some traditional and commentators to see how they're making sense of this moment. If you turn to source B, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, great. If you want to know, I put the biographies of all of these commentators at the back of the packet so that you can see who they were. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, of course, is the great 19th century German founder of modern Orthodoxy or the School of Frankfurt, brilliant grammarian, and also a bit of a polemicist against Reform Judaism. Okay, so let's look at Hirsch's insight. Hirsch says this. So you with me? We're on page 2. The word aval always contradicts a prior assumption and darkens what previously appeared clear and absolute. So he's reading aval here also as the word like afel. Afel is also darkness, afela. And so he says the word aval always comes to contradict a prior assumption. But we are guilty, meaning until now they did not see themselves as guilty at all. And even now they accuse themselves not only of cruelty and hardness of heart, until this moment they've not even admitted that much. They believed all their actions were merely acts of self-defense. This is the first moment of conscience for the brothers. For 20, this is now, we're over 27, we're 20 years into the project. Maybe 20, couple, 22 years into the project of having sold their brother. 2+ decades. And this is the first moment. Aval. It's like, oh, until now we've been in the dark, but now we see it. Something's happening here. We feel a little bit of guilt. Reuven, however, sees their guilt as more than hardness of heart, right? They're not even guilty of selling him. They don't mention selling him. What did they mention? That they listened to him. They could hear him suffering. They could hear his struggles. They could hear his entreaties and pleas and completely ignore it. And so they feel a hardness of heart. Reuven says it's worse than that. From the outset, he told them, you're doing evil, you are sinning. He saw Joseph as nothing more than a child and regarded Joseph's plans, of which the other brothers were afraid, as mere youthful behavior. He kind of wrote it off. He's like, okay, he's just being a arrogant little pisher. Just being annoying, like a little brother. He's annoying. And therefore, Reuven says to them, you accuse yourselves of lacking compassion, but the truth is that you committed a great sin against Joseph. It wasn't just that you heard his pleas. There was no justifiable pretense for what you did. Now it goes, we now examine the concepts of guilt and sin. Asham roots, here he gets into the same thing that we just did earlier, but he doesn't connect it to the word shame, which is name, guilt that is focusing on the lack of name or reputation. He gets to the place of shmama. The word shmama means desolation. Look at this. Roots that begin with an aleph attribute to the individual the concept expressed by the second and third root letters, and so too with asham. Shameh means to make or to be empty, and from this comes sham, there, indicating a place that is occupied or will be occupied. Shmama, or desolation, means a place emptied of all content. And similarly, spiritual desolation is emptiness of thought, void of imagination or reflection. Thus, asham indicates that the cause of this desolation lies within the person themselves. If someone loses all their property due to external causes, they are desolate but not guilty. But if the loss stems from their own character, then recognition of that fact is asham. I have created desolation. I have created desolation. Asham, therefore, means recognizing oneself as deserving of desolation, deprived of all life's benefits and joys. Asham refers to the external consequence expected from a transgression. The asham is the voice of conscience, placing the sinner face to face with the desolation that they themselves have orchestrated. And so too here. For 20 years, the brothers defended themselves and justified their actions, and now, shaken by the distress, they arrive at a recognition, but we are guilty. We have created desolation. An unatoned wrong lies upon us, threatening danger and ruin. Desolation. Asham is ashmama. The voice of conscience cannot be suppressed. One may cover embers with ashes, but even after 50 years, the flame can rise on its own. But all our justifications are false and self-deception. In those two words, aval ashemim anachnu. It's like we, but is the single word that we are no longer confused. Aval, no longer balal, we're no longer mixed up. We have clarity. We stand now in the light of what we did. We have brought this desolation on ourselves. There's so for Hirsch, he kind of jumps over whether there's a difference between what they think and what Reuven thinks. We'll get to that in a second. But for Rav Hirsch, this is it. They actually are in their conscience. It's been awakened, right? What say you? Yes, Rob.
Should I take this?
I guess so.
I won't drop the mic.
Yeah, yeah.
Rob, could you grab the handheld mic, please? Thank you so much. Also, Jay online wants to say something too. Yeah.
So, is it on? Yes? Okay. This story makes no sense.
Oh,
to
makes
me,
sense. Okay, good.
Because at the time when they threw their brother,
Yeah,
they were murdering their brother, in essence. It wasn't, it was murder. They
right,
didn't know what was in the pit. They didn't know what was.
right. We're gonna get there in a second.
No, no. 20 years later,
Yeah.
when they have problems,
Yeah.
major,
Yeah,
now they're feeling better.
right. Yeah.
So the story doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are not in the story. And one of the things that's not in the story that the rabbinic tradition says, which they're not mentioning, or Rabbi Hirsch is not mentioning, is that there's an opinion in various early sources that the brothers believed. Because you asked this question, it's the sources later on say this in the packet, but I'll just tell you, and I know it from before the packet, but there's an opinion that when Joseph brought the brothers evil words or their speech, that's the kind of the first moment that we meet Joseph. He's a tattletale or a spy, right? The brothers already were shamed by him. And there's an opinion in the Talmud that says that when you gossip about somebody, it's three people, right? It's the person who listens, the person who speaks, and the person where it goes, or the person spoken about. So there was already like this kind of rabbinic interpretive lens that wanted to see the brothers as somewhat justified in their desire to rid the family of this scourge, right? Not to say that the Talmud says that it was a good idea, but just to enter the mind of them. They're doing something wrong, but everybody who does something wrong justifies it to themselves, and it hangs on something maybe that's there, and it then became something much greater. Not that I'm not saying that makes it make sense, but it's clear that the brothers, of all the brothers, only Judah is really the one who contends with the enormity of what has just taken place in chapter 38. He leaves the brothers, right? The brothers seem content to go the rest of their lives with their flimsy justifications for having done this. Now, you can think that's shocking. It is shocking, but it's not as if it's unheard of.
No, these are guys who started the Jewish people. It's
Right.
not just
Well,
12 Yutzes.
yeah. Well, it's hard. You don't. It's hard to reconcile. I think when you're in the space of trying to understand these characters in the simple meaning of the story, it's not reconcilable fully without a lot of, sophisticated, intellectual gymnastics to make it also line up with the hagiographic or the kind of the building up as like the building blocks, the holy, there's when we're in this, they actually made a sin and they're human and they do really crazy things like marry, two women and say they're going to kill their, run away. They're going to kill they're going to, it's going to kill him. Like these are the Shvatim, they're the tribes, but in this moment, they're deeply flawed characters, clearly. And so I think it's hard to reconcile that with later rabbinic texts will always see them as entirely righteous. And yeah, I don't think it's easy to square that circle. Yeah, Tomas. I know Jay's next because his hand was up early. Yeah.
Oh,
With the mic, yeah.
no, until I study.
Wait, sorry. The mic isn't. Can you turn on the mic, please? Thank you so much.
It is on, but it doesn't. It says it's on.
I think it's on. Can you hear me now, Catherine?
Okay, people can hear. Okay.
Is it working? So just I can't really keep up with the Hebrew until I study with Wendy. But in English, there's some great coincidences in terms of the paradoxical meanings of these words. If you're apart from something, you are disconnected, but if you're a part of something, you're connected. And so parting, but also becoming apart, like the word means its opposite. And similarly, a boundary and a bond, it's the same word. You're divided by a boundary, but because you share the boundary, you are connected by the boundary and you're bonded by it. And so you're a bondsman, you're a surety, you're a, it's that exact word. And then similarly, shame, thinking of Joseph being dressed and undressed, and revealed and concealed. Shame goes back to the same root as screen. It means covering, concealment, cover. So to be ashamed is to be screened, and you can hear it also in scheme and scam, because a conspiracy is a sort of only an appearance without a reality behind it. It's just the screen. So to be ashamed is literally to be covered, and to be unashamed is literally to be revealed. So the language in English is very sympathetic.
It's so beautiful because also the word in Hebrew for atonement is to cover, but they're different. There are different coverings. Like the word kapara or atonement, like Yom Kippur, is ransom, but it really is lechaper, is to cover over something. Like in the ark, you covered in the ark, they covered it on the inside and the outside with tar. Tar is called kofer, kafar. So sometimes Yom Kippurim is the day of knowing the coverings, right? Is to cover something over, is to not see it because it's too much to look at. But on Yom Kippur also, it's a day in which we also have coverings. We wear special garments, but they're the correct garment, the transparent garment, as opposed to the thicker one, which is a screen. And so like there, it's the thing and it's opposite to the screen and the cover. The screen can be the sin, but it also could be the atonement, depending on which way you're looking at it. Wonderful. Okay, Jay, go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. I have two little observation questions which open big philosophical, theological issues for me. First, aval. Aval could easily also be translated as however. And if you take Hirsch's afel, you have the opposition of the clear but contradiction versus the however of shading, which is much more subtle and problematic in many ways. I don't know which one necessarily applies here, but I think it's an interesting question because to me, much more of reality is captured by shading than by clear contradiction. Getting to clear contradiction is much rarer than shading. So that was number one. Number two is it on a literary way. It's fascinating that they are already anticipating Joseph, even way before they know it's actually Joseph. Now, you've kind of put it in the theological framework of, well, there's a higher thing operating here. But we, in fact, know dramatically that it's Joseph. Now, I know traditionally you can say, well, Joseph is carrying on God's plan. But this, again, opens up that big, big question of, human agency versus transcendent motivation in terms of what's going on.
Yes, I mean, there wasn't a question, but like, yes, I agree that that's, yeah, absolutely. The first, both of your comments are I think are spot on. A fail and shading feels a little bit different than aval, and they are anticipating Joseph. Like it's clear that it's on their minds, it's on their conscience, right? But it's not. It hasn't emerged yet. It's been submerged for whatever reasons. People had to put it behind themselves. Sometimes an act is, the conscious mind can't allow ourselves to remember the enormity of an act, both as a perpetrator or as a victim, and it can come out much later. They clearly have all kinds of sophisticated sophisticated rationalizations for what they did, right? To some extent. If you read biographies of people who, good people who've done horrible things, thinking that they did it for the state or did it for, people can become completely deluded in a moment, and then it takes 20 years for them to fully. Like, did they come to this without some direct danger to them? It's kind of clearly not the case. They didn't come to some, awareness, in memory. It's a little bit, that there is a comeuppance, right? And we've been caught. We thought we could get away with it, and it's really not that satisfying on that level, right? Let's look at the Shadal. Can we just look at the Shadal? Okay, I know there are a lot of hands. We're not going to get through any of the sources, So I got to pull it back for a second. We got to get to the Shadal and some other, because you're going to see that a lot of the people here are thinking in like you, but a little bit differently. So look at I'm sorry, go to Rashi. Just skip over the Shadal, okay? Go to D, source D. You there? So Rashi brings two interpretations, which always makes you wonder about why he needed a second one. So Rashi's first interpretation, aval, is kitargumo. He says he often does this when he's trying to set up the simple meaning of the text. He says the simple meaning of the word aval here means, as Onkelos, the very, very early Aramaic translator writes, bekushta. Kushta in Aramaic means emet, the truth. Aval means here not the shading, or it doesn't mean, it means kind of the moral clarity, but he says, just read it as aval, truth be told. Aval, the truth is that we are guilty. In other words, the truth of why this has happened to us, kushta, that's the truth. Why does Rashi need to bring another interpretation? It says, Ra'iti bebreshit rabbah. I also saw in the great compendium of midrashic material of the rabbis, this is a Roman expression. Aval, which sounds like Hebrew to me and you at this point, apparently according to Rashi, in Breshit Rabbah, Rashi quoting Breshit Rabbah says, oh, this is a Roman word. And it's like the word indeed. Aval means bram. Indeed. Not truth necessarily, but indeed. What's the difference between these two interpretations of Rashi? The truth is that we're guilty, and indeed we are guilty.
It makes sense because it's valid.
It's
valid.
Right. Validation is
That comes from the Latin valor.
valor. You'll see, right, exactly. So let's look exactly. Let's look, or verum, right? Verum is also verification. It's verified, indeed. Veritas is truth. So, but it's truth, but it's, are they the same? So this next, if you look at source E, which I could not translate for the life of me, I didn't have time. I couldn't cut it and paste it. I'll just read it to you so you can hear. This is a more modern, a modern interpretive Rashi says, here the difference between it's truth or versus indeed. Can you see the little box? I'm just going to go as slowly as possible. If you can't read Hebrew letters, sorry. V'ulam. V'ulam. Rashi hevi shnei bi'urim. He says, however, Rashi brought two interpretations. Aval, kitargumo bekushta. He says, aval, the first interpretation of Rashi is bekushta, in truth. And then Rashi said, I saw in the great Midrash, Lishna de Roma Ahu. It's a language of Rome. He's just quoting Rashi. Aval, Baram. I'm on the third line. And I saw that one of the wise men of Jerusalem wrote, that the difference between the two interpretations of Rashi is in the essence of their confession. Lefi Targum Onkelos, according to Targum Onkelos, the Onkelos, that person's right, saying Bikushta Chayavin Anachna, in truth we are guilty. Heim Modim B'Ashmatam, they are admitting their guilt. Shaloshamu Litachnunav, they admit that they didn't hear his entreaties and his cries. But they're not admitting that they feel badly about selling him. Like they just feel badly that they listened to their brother crying, but like they had to sell him. Keneged Zot, he says, but against this, Ladata Midrash Shenakat Beram, but against that interpretation, Rashi will bring a second one. According to this wise man of Jerusalem, he thinks that there's a difference between the two different approaches to the word aval. The Midrash, according to this Jerusalemite wise sage, the Midrash says Biram, right? This word Biram, in, like, veritas, or whatever it is, indeed, Hamishamesh letevat ach belashon hakodesh, which is sort of like ach, which is like rock, meaning only us. Kavanatam l'marsha rak hema shemin b'chol aninan. If it's the word, the second meaning aval means it's us. Only we are guilty. V'hosif shekach nirmaz gam b'tamei mikra. Why would they say only me? Because Reuven didn't want to sell him. Reuven never had any interest in selling him. He wasn't a part of that whole sale business. And so they're actually separating themselves out and saying just us, meaning we who agreed to sell him, we're the ones who are guilty. And according to the second interpretation of Rashi, they're at least admitting that the whole thing, not just hearing his cries, but the selling itself, which is why, right, Reuven says, I told you from the beginning it was a sin. They admit that the whole thing was wrong from the beginning to end. And there's like, that matters. And listen to this beautiful thing. And this is alluded to, he says, in the cantillation trope. Aval Ashemi manachnu. Mikevan shekulam amru vidui, because all of them at that moment confessed. Aval lo kulam itchartu be'ota midah. Not all of them regretted with the same, in the same amount. Hut amu aval. V'anachnu bezarka shu olev yored. It's for that reason the cantillation marks on the word aval and on the word anachnu it goes up and it goes down musically. Lirmos, to allude ala shinuyim shebenhem, to show the differences between them. That musical up and down is to separate out musically what thematically is being alluded to in the words. It's aval, not all of us. Ashemi manachnu, not all of us have the same level of guilt. We are guilty. Reuven and Yehuda, maybe not so much. They're much less guilty than we are. So that's this little thing in there, right? So this is already like this wrestling match with, are they really guilty? Are they really remorseful? Do they really understand? If you look now at source, yeah, go ahead, Amy. Oh,
Microphone, strategic. You got it.
yeah, you gotta, you have to stand up in front of everyone, but you're a dancer. You can do that.
I'm not a great speaker, as we know, but we'll try. As a sort of a desolate one, listening to all this conversation about the machinations of guilt and how we are explaining this, it's not happening in a court of law. It's happening in people's hearts and minds. And like, I feel like, yeah, all that energy going into figuring it all out. What does it do for us who are reading it?
Yeah. Okay, good question. I refuse to answer. I refuse to answer because I believe that everybody learns Torah differently. Some people want already the text. Some people love it intellectually and want to know what previous generations of rabbis were wrestling with. And some people want it to be an immediate infusion into their neshama, into their soul. And sometimes that happens. Like Torah study is so deep and so broad and so unique that each person can like land where they want to land. But listen at least to what our ancestors are wrestling with here. No, I know that, but I'm saying I think that the wrestling match here is we're trying to understand this moment of the brothers' awakening, and is it at what level it's happening, and also what was going on with them during those years, and how they lived with themselves and how they lived between themselves in the wake of something absolutely horrific. And there is a karmic comeuppance, as I said earlier. There's something that's happening. They're interpreting external events through the prism of their own secret knowing that something lives in them. There's a secret. My friend Danny Shapiro has a podcast called Family Secrets. There's a family secret in Genesis. And the family secret is that the brothers are living their lives and going on with it, having murdered, or at least tried to murder, their own brother in a full reenactment of Cain and Abel. But it's worse than Cain and Abel, because in Cain and Abel, Cain, of course, lives his life with the sign of Cain on his forehead. He lives his life knowing that it's gadol avonim minaso. I can't go on, he says to God. I can't carry this. And so God lightens the burden of Cain. But no such lightening happens for the brothers. The brothers have, it seems, no remorse whatsoever, or at least we don't know about it. And so here, this is the first moment when the text actually gives us an insight into the brothers' thinking. Like we haven't met the brothers' inner story. We only know that they hated their brother. They know that they used to speak in ways that Joseph would undermine the tight-knit sense of fraternal responsibility and being bound to one another and that boundary. And we know that Joseph has been thrown into some remarkably rags to riches story Unwittingly, the brothers think that they're getting rid of the dreamer who made them feel as if they were meaningless, and they are participants in their own eventual subjugation to him. Their power eventually makes them powerless. Their guilt makes him innocent, right? And so this remarkable moment is profoundly important to plumb the depths of it. What is the level at which it hits them? Is it superficial? Is it only because they're afraid of what's about to happen to them because of this? Or is it they really get a real moral clarity about what they did? Is it fraternal guilt? Is it like, oh, how could we do this to our brother? Or how could we do this if we're going to be punished? And that matters because the Torah is trying to essentially find out the level of moral accountability that these brothers are representing, if that makes sense. Okay. Thank you. So let's look on page
Actually,
5.
Rabbi, there's been quite a few people online who've been wanting to
I know, Caroline. Thank you so much. I see their hands up and I'm moving forward. I'll come back to you guys. Thank you. So if you look at the Malbim on page 6, I kind of figured that the Malbim and others are just as important to listen to as everybody in the room. I'm sorry. I love everybody, but I want to give the Malbim a space also this morning to speak. Is that okay? Okay. Let's look at the you know what? Let's go to Rabbeinu Bachya. I'm sorry, source N. Rabbeinu, okay, source N. All the way on page 7 now, okay? Top of the page. This is the way of the righteous. When they sin, they confess the matter and justify upon themselves the judgment as in the matter. So according to the Malbim, when it's a simple, straightforward moment. There's no ambiguity. The way of the righteous, coming back to you, Rob. The way of the righteous. They're righteous, so they're admitting that they've made a sin. 20 years later, the way of the righteous, when they sin, they confess the matter. That we saw the distress of his soul as he pleaded to us. This indicates, according to the opinion of those who hold that his brothers never sold him at all. If so, they would have said, but we are guilty for having sold our brothers. So how does the Malbim work out the seeming, like the partial guilt? They're only upset because they heard him pleading, but not because they sold him. There's an opinion that says that they didn't sell him. Okay. It's amazing to read these commentaries because they're also trying to hide over the enormity of the sin. They have their own project. Everybody has a project. The brothers have a project. They can't admit it to themselves. The rabbis have a project, right? Therefore, it has come upon us. The meaning is, rightly has this trouble come upon us. Okay, so at least there it feels like, okay, there's a sense of there's a karmic comeuppance. The world is not, the universe is not completely inured to kind of tit for tat, or there is some kind of justice in the world. Now, I'm going to open it up in a second for voices about this. I wanted to read to you this. I wanted to read with me the Kli Yakar, page 9, and then we're going to open it up. Okay. And the Kli Yakar brings us back to what Rob was saying about the brothers thinking, or the way they justify this to themselves. And I love this, just the way that he thought about this, Rabbi Ephraim Lunitz. And also his blood, behold, it is demanded. V'gam damo hine didrash. The language of also appears to be explained this way. Since the brothers thought that Joseph was liable to death according to the law, for evil speech kills 3, rabbinic project, bing, 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 justify the brothers. And Joseph brought their evil report, which is like he killed them, like, the important word here being like, not actually, like they actually tried to kill him. He only morally maybe ashamed them. Further, he came to spy on them when he came to Dotan. Therefore, they sought stratagems of law according to the Torah, rabbinic project, to kill him before he would approach them and kill them. For one who comes to kill you, rise early to kill him. In other words, they anticipated that he was about to shame them, and so they actually took the law into their own hands to combat his shaming them with his speech, to and that would kill them, to now they decided to kill him first as a self-defense. Okay, not so great. But here's where he turns to something that we're like, okay, this feels true to the text. The essence of the guilt is the attribute of cruelty that was in them, that they did not listen as he pleaded to them and said, but we are guilty concerning our brother, that we saw the distress of his soul as he pleaded to us and did not listen. Therefore, this trouble has come upon us. And they did not mention that they sought to kill him, because they thought that from the side of seeking killing or the sale or the throwing to the pit, they had no guilt. But then Reuven reproaches them and says, did I not say to you, do not sin against the child? Since he is like a child and not yet liable to punishment in the court above, therefore he has no judgment of death. And if so, you have two transgressions in your hands. For the Holy One, blessed be he, demands from you the attribute of cruelty. For therefore this Lord and ruler does not listen to our pleas, for all of us speak. In other words, we are entreating this person, this ruler, and he's not listening to us. Guess what? That's parallel to when Joseph was being ignored by us, right? It is fitting for you to overlook the sin of his youth, and now also his blood, behold, it is demanded its explanation, his blood together with the cruelty, right? Even though you did not kill him, God demands his blood and considers it for you as if you spilled his blood, and that he was sold as an eternal slave, for it is possible that he died because he was a child of delights and had not tried working. In other words, you threw this innocent child into a pit. What do you think was going to happen to him? He probably died, and you are all guilty of it. He excludes himself, and the brothers get it. Okay, lots of hands are up. We heard from our sages. Let's go into the Zoom, and we'll come back into the room. Marilyn, Sevilla, and then into the Zoom, into the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go to a super nerdy place that we've already passed. But anyways, I just wanted to go back to Bavel, because you did a great teaching once about Bavel, talking about the mix, and that God mixed the all the words together because they were trying to make a name. It's got the Bavel and it's got the
Nice,
shame.
nice.
Yeah. So
So this
something
is great. This is great because you bring us back intertextually to the project, the mythic project of like what the purpose of brotherhood and sisterhood and family is all about. Like that
yes.
story is a story of people gathering together, and even in the story, there's a lot of rabbinic midrash that human beings coming together, can either be to build the world or destroy it, and it wasn't clear in the story of the Tower of Babel, right? Language was being used. Was language being used to build a world, or language being used to destroy one? And that's a very relevant part of the Joseph narrative, because Joseph's words, I mean, here, how crazy is it that, like, on the one hand, words we know can incite violence. We don't need any proof of that. We know that. We also saw it last week, and we know it, it happens all the time. On the one hand, but here in the rabbinic justifications, there's a confusion between words and actions, right? It's not the same, right? Sticks and stones, it's true. It's true, like Joseph indeed did break trust with the brothers, but it didn't mean that their actions were justified. It's an absolute confusion, and it's a strange weighting of that which is a means towards an end and the end itself. Right? It's true, violence, words of course can lead to violence, ideas can lead to violence, of course, but actual violence, like, it's not the same thing. Like, someone whose reputation has been ruined is not the same as someone who's been killed. And so there's a real confusion here in the Tower of Babel story. There's just confusion with the brothers. I would be remiss, like, not to come back, and then I want to hear Susan and Sevilla, but like this moment, it's kind of funny because I think when we read the story on a simple level, we actually, as listeners or readers, it touches us. Like it doesn't become this sophisticated, or doesn't need to be this. Like, somebody needs to, like, the brothers' moment of awareness that their brothers suffered and they watched it. Like, after an hour of thinking about this and feeling like maybe their contrition is not as pure or as profound as it should be, I wouldn't want to lose sight of the importance in the story, and for us as listeners, of how suffering can force us out of our illusions, and suffering that visits us, even if it's post-dated, can also make us think retrospectively about, whether or not, we acted with wisdom, whether we acted in, hindsight being what it is. The Torah feels the need to include this part of the story. Like they felt like it might not always be a good idea to think that something that happens to you is because of you. I think that would be really hubris and narcissistic. But like it's really an important idea towards doing tikkun in the world, is to think, oh, I wonder how I participated in this. Like I'm not convinced of like the secret that everything in the world is manifested by my level of consciousness or my ideas, but I'm also not in the other direction, which means that it's random. Like I think there's clearly the text wants us to know. Now, ironically, it's not God that did it. They might think it's God, but we know it's Joseph thinks he's God, but like, Joseph, Tzvia, and then Tony, and then I think Paul wants to say something.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Sorry.
I want to say hi, David. I don't know if you remember me, but my former partner and I went to your very first Shabbat. Jill and Susan. I don't know if you remember us.
I do.
You do? Yeah, awesome. Shabbat Shalom. And I've been here a couple of times and I spoke for Jill. Some of the people there know this. Anyway, this was amazing. I really, really wanted to speak earlier, but it actually was even more appropriate for me to say what I'm saying now after what you just said about suffering and how suffering changes things. Because what I wanted to say before and what I'll still say now is I think so much of this hinges on the fact of interpretation and the word Shema, that you've been saying heard, you've been saying listen. We didn't listen, but that what it was is that they didn't hear, they didn't understand, they didn't comprehend. Like the words were happening, but they didn't comprehend them. And embedded in the word Shema, again, is that root shame or name and all the other stuff we just looked at. And I looked at while doing this, well, what does it mean to add an ayin to a root? Like what's that point? What does ayin do to the root? And that ayin has all this stuff that I can't say in like a quick synopsis, but about insight and seeing and divinity. Also, another thing I just read, it's a nun and a vav, it's humility and Torah combined. And so there's something in the fact that the words came to them, the distress, the pleading came to them, but they couldn't hear it. Their ability to see or connect with God, they couldn't hear it. And now what you were just saying is they've suffered and suddenly they're
suffering. But
what?
now they're suffering. So it's almost like, first of all, a couple of things. Nun and the Vav that you just mentioned, I don't know who said that, but it just for people who heard that, Nun as a letter of the 27 or 22 letters, but 5 ending letters, 27 letters. The Nun is often associated with the quality of humility because it's the number 50, which is its representation, is the 50th gate, or the lowest, it's the highest and the lowest. So it's kind of humility, emptiness. So Nun, it also represents falling and being empty. Nafal, Nun. And Vav is always associated with Torah because it's like the letter of extension, the letter of, I don't want to go into it. So Nun, Vav, at the end of Shamanu, I think is what you were referring to there, that we have heard because of our humility and our Torah. That's, I think, what you were saying. The 2-letter suffix there coming with deep mystical meaning to just represent not just the plural we, but also we as because of our humility and our Torah. The word Shema here is beautiful.
Oh, wait a second, David. This is really cool. That isn't what I meant, but that's like another layer, because I was talking about the fact that what I just read is that that an ayin, and this was a Chabad thing I just read, an ayin is made up of the letters nun and vav, like that an ayin is created by those two, But you just added another thing, which is that after that ayin, we have another nun and
Yeah,
vav.
new, like, nun vav, new, okay, we added more, we added new Torah, new nun vav, but I was gonna add that you did something brilliant, Svia, because we started off the class talking about Aleph, Shin, Mem, that when Aleph is in front of a word, it can be its opposite, it can create a negation. But you then brought the letter ayin, which is, again, phonetically, it's an oral, it's to some extent identical in sound, but not in the sequence, and it comes here as a suffix of the same two letters. So embedded in this one verse is both asham with an aleph and shma'ah with an ayin, and each of them represent like some version. There's a negation in both of them, and it speaks to a kind of what many of us know as mature or adults in life, which is the ability to hear, which here really means to identify and with, to get it. Like the ability to hear the other often depends on a certain depth that we acquire against our will, which is that we suffer and we see ourselves not as the character until we become, I mean, everybody, like, what's that famous line? Like, I thought my parents were really, not Tom Sawyer, no, Mark Twain's great line that when I was a young man, my father was, and was an idiot or something. I thought it was too, but now he seems to learn so much. It's like, right. So like, it's like, how many times I remember in life thinking that I would like, my life will not be that way. And then you wind up being a parent and you think, oh, it's a lot harder than I thought it was. I wasn't going to necessarily do it better than, like, you suffer and things don't work out exactly. Now, we don't find that experience so much with the brothers. Like, that's a Judah moment. Like, Judah suffers the way his father Jacob does. He loses two, like, even before Jacob is terrified of letting go of Benjamin, Judah has already lost two sons, which is like almost preemptively required for him to be able to speak with any maturity to his dad and say, I know what it's like to lose two kids. I promise to take care of Benjamin, I promise. Like, Reuven doesn't have that, and clearly the opposite. Reuven offers his two children. So he clearly doesn't have that. Now, do the brothers now arrive at what it's like to throw their what they did? Well, maybe now they realize that Joseph or whoever this person is not going to listen to them no matter what they say. And so they know that quality perhaps of being like, they're not being room for compassion. Like, they can anticipate that Joseph will be harsh with them. And so, or they don't know it's Joseph, but this person will be harsh, and they're like, oh, maybe this is what it feels like to be in the pit and ask for compassion and to not receive it. Maybe, like maybe.
Want to start the Society for the Rehabilitation of Reuven.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, he's the most compassionate person.
I'm so sorry. Can you move close to a mic, or can we move a mic to you because we can't hear you? Yes.
So Reuven is the most compassionate person in this whole story, and he never gets any credit. He's the only one that really spoke up forcefully against this. He wasn't, we talk about the brothers, but he wasn't one of the brothers doing this. Jacob never gave him an inch.
That's true.
He
did sleep with Jacob's wife.
Well, didn't he just move the bed to?
No, that's not the simple. That's not the simple meaning. That's what the rabbis do with it.
Oh, that's okay.
They have a project.
All right, so
they've got
Reuven serves everything he gets.
No, I agree.
But he really,
Reuven.
when he offers his two kids, it may have been ham-handed, but it was. I mean, he was really trying. He was so he was always like doing his best, and I never quite see that.
So let's rehabilitate Reuven, and let's start a society for all of those whose intentions are good, but who absolutely mangle the method. Like, they just like, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. I'm just misunderstood. That's his theme song. I feel I would be remiss in the remaining one. We're actually 10 minutes over, but I feel I'd be remiss not to mention this is less than 1 week since Bondi Beach.
Yeah.
And it's also a week, like last night, one of our members, Richard, came over to me and said that what happened at Brown University, went there, it was like high school for him. He said, imagine a high school shooting. And I was very moved by that. And then, of course, I also know, obviously what happened at MIT, the tragedy and the horror of that. And those two sweet, kids who were in that econ class who were just there. And, but closer to home in terms of the Jewish people, not just personally, because it's the opposite. It's not personal in a way. What happened in Bonai Beach, it's transpersonal. It's us as a people. And that in that way, I feel as though we're hearing the cries of our brothers and sisters and not responding. Like we've responded very forcefully and very powerfully, I think, as a community. But it's shocking that it's like less than a week. It's less than a week, and it's the worst massacre of Jews outside, right? No, Pittsburgh was 11 rather. And so, yeah, it's Pittsburgh here, but I mean, 10-7, like we're talking, targeting that maybe, in that way, maybe, I don't know, Buenos Aires. I mean, there have been obviously terror attacks and too many to name, but in this particular way, I think it's just important to mention it. I mentioned it last night in the sermon, and I'll mention it again today, that there has to be a refusal on our part to move forward in a way. Like we can move forward, of course, we have to, but the refusal of Jacob to be comforted is also our refusal to be comforted by any of the kind of outrageous things that have been said this week that deflect from the truth of what took place, and and also that deflect also from Islamic fundamentalism and its proxies, right? I don't think that we should be afraid of Islamophobia in naming the reality of a pernicious ideology that seems to be unabated at this moment, and at the same time affirm. It doesn't need to be said, but I think people want it to be said. Of course, it doesn't mean that you indict billions of people, right? There are peace-loving Muslims everywhere, and the majority are, and it's not to in any way to cast aspersions upon human beings, but there are ideologies of hate, and those ideologies of hate at this moment that are targeting Jews is supported by a demonization of the state of Israel and the state and those who support it, and seeing all Jews in some way as monsters. That again, ISIS would do this no matter what, but it's been, especially in Australia, like naming the truth here for us. In Australia, Jews were saying that the riots on October 8th in front of the Sydney Opera House, and where you make an entire state and people into monsters, don't be surprised when monsters come for them. And the only thing that we Jews can do to support, right, anti-Semitism is to give it permission and refuse to speak up in the way that Reuven spoke up, or to speak up in the way that others have spoken up. And we have to continue to speak out and say that enough is enough. It's beyond at this point. It is beyond. And larger conversations, have to be had. But one thing is abundantly clear, is that, a sweet child named Matilda was shot on a beach celebrating Hanukkah, and today is the 6th day of Hanukkah. And I'm sorry? I'm sorry, brother, but I'm finishing my sentence, and then I'm going to go inside so everybody, I want to pray for them and hold them in my hearts, and thank all of you for learning Torah this morning. May the light of Hanukkah continue to dispel a lot of darkness. And may God give us the strength, to hear the cries of our brothers and sisters, both Jewish brothers and sisters and the broader human family, which I know all of you are sensitive to. And hopefully you'll live in a world where the stain of Cain and Abel will be, healed to some degree in our lifetime. All right, friends, have a great break. I'll be in Israel starting Monday. I'll be back, God willing, in the new year, in the Gregorian New Year, and I'll see you then. Okay, everybody.